91616 and or 1700. By the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized. And when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask first only that you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards. But we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. Also, you can follow us on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel for live video streaming of this show, YouTube or Von Radio channel, and like us on our Facebook page. Tonight we have two segments of the show. The first segment, we're very pleased that the Mental Health Department in the Nevis Island Administration here in Nevis has included us in their celebration of the week or month of activities. And that is why we're going to be discussing in the first segment of the program this evening. It may not be a topic that everybody wants to hear about, but I guarantee you it is a topic that everybody should hear and know about. So we are very pleased to have them. Mr. Coffey, good evening.
Good evening, sir, and good evening to our listening audience. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
And it's always good to have you because we've had you before.
Certainly.
So I'm going to give you the honor of introduce who we never had.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So with me in studio is Mr. Alden Claxton, also a counselor and social worker by profession at the mental health unit.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Okay, good. Well, why don't we start by doing this? Tell us, not everybody knows who you are and where your abode is. So, the both of you, let's do that, and then we get into the full discussion.
Okay, so my name is Macmillan Coffey, and I'm a counselor at the mental health unit with the NIA, Nevis Island Administration, with the department for at least 2 years now. And yeah, we are located at the Prospect, and in Prospect, we'll talk a little more about that in terms of our new location. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very new and exciting. So yeah, that's basically me, Alden.
Yes, so my name is Alden Claxton. I am a clinical social worker and counselor at the mental health unit. Yeah, I guess that's it now. I've been with the unit for the past, seven months now?
Yeah. Just about.
Yeah.
Just about
that.
Yeah, okay. So, we thank you for being here as well. So, we're at the department and this is Mental Health Week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, I know we got a few activities and to highlight and make people aware of it. Why don't we begin? Because not everybody knows and understand, because we have a stigma here.
Sure.
You say mental health and you figure something is wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's
right?
True.
When the truth is that everything is right. Because everybody must take care of the mental health, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you as a professional, because I don't know much, so tell us about it.
Okay, let's talk about mental health. So, there's this saying that there's no health without good mental health. And when we look at health, we look at health in a holistic manner. And so if, everything else is okay, your heart is functioning well and your other organs are functioning well, but your mind is not functioning well, then you're not totally all right. And so what we're saying is that to be totally fine, we need to ensure that we are well holistically, including our minds. And that's what mental health is about. Mental health is about ensuring that persons are functioning in the optimal manner in terms of their thought process, their emotions. Because again, when we talk about mental health, it's not just about the mind. It's about our emotions. It's about our behavior. because our behavior and our emotions are controlled by the center up here, which is our brain. All right, everything that we do, before we do it, there's a signal from your brain, your mind, to your body. In terms of, and depending on how you feel, you behave that way. And so you see, it is all connected, and so we can't separate the mind from the rest of the body. You want to add anything to that, Alden?
No, I think you got it right there. With the mind, you said something about being whole body, healthy and whole. But with the mind, if you aren't well in your mind, then that affects how you are physically.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
We're gonna get into some other stuff as well, but I just like to, because I mentioned earlier that you got a couple of activities. Why don't we mention those?
Right. So we celebrate a week of activities. We started on Sunday with a church service at the Emma's Chapel in Charlestown, right opposite the old bus buy. And then yesterday, Monday, we had a pack today. Yesterday we had a walkthrough of the new facility by the Premier and other officials from the Ministry of Health. And then from there we had an award ceremony where we felt it was necessary to honor some key stakeholders, persons who have partnered with us over the years. A lot of persons may not know, but we run a community-based program, and we cannot do it alone. And we recognize that we need persons in the community to assist us to effectively discharge our duties. And so we felt it was important to, show a little token of appreciation to some persons and some organizations who have been very helpful to us and work with us over the last years. So we had that yesterday at the gender department. And then from 12 to 3, we had our recreation day or events, activities for our clients. It was really open to the public. We had fun. It was great. It went well. Today, Tuesday, we had what we call a mocktail competition. And Alden, since I was your brainchild, why did you talk about mocktail competition?
Yeah, so as Coffee said, the mocktail is my brainchild, and we had that today. The whole rationale behind it was just to make people aware that we live in a very fet-centric sort of society where we love to party, and so it was just created to make people more aware that you could have fun and you could go out and enjoy yourself without reverting to alcohol or drinking alcohol, and there are alternatives that you could consume than alcohol. Our community have been rocked recently by some deaths related to alcohol and substance abuse, and I just felt that it was necessary for us to have something that is fun and engaging, but also something that educates people. And so with that mocktail, we had local bartenders from restaurants here in the island, so Catch It, Queen City, Barn,
Yachtsman,
and Yachtsman, Nevitalia, Sunshines, Four Seasons. Did I miss someone else?
I think that was about it. Yeah, we had 6 participants. Yeah.
Yeah, and so early on Monday, I spoke about the mental health and its campaign, and a part of that campaign is for us to build allyship within our community. And I think today, with the participation of all of these bars and individuals who came out to support us, it just showed how much our efforts are paying off with this building of allyship within our community.
And then on tomorrow, Wednesday, we have a health screening and that's going to be again at the Prospect facility. We have an open tent. It's open to the public. Persons are asked to come in to check, their glucose levels, their blood pressure, BMI, body mass index, and then we are adding to this depression and anxiety screening. We know that even long before COVID, these emotional disorders have been a serious problem in our society, and some people, maybe because of denial and so, or because they don't want to, I would say denial, don't want to own up to it. There's a serious problem in our community, and we felt it would be important to add the anxiety and depression screening. So this is open up to the entire public. We invite everybody to come over to Prospect in our new facility, and just have yourself checked. Who knows? And then on Thursday we have a very important workshop. Stigma and discrimination. This is a huge problem. We spoke about it in the introduction. Stigma. Nobody wants to talk about mental health. As the host said, is that it may not be the most sexy topic to talk about. That's not something people gravitate towards. But at the end of the day, it is a reality of life that we cannot live life without talking about our mental health or taking care of our mental health. And so I think that workshop is of vital importance, and really and truly, having worked here for 2 years, I can see how stigma and discrimination have affected people to access the help that they're in need of. And so we want to start the workshop with professionals, not just in the healthcare, but in the police and other organizations who work with us, and then hopefully that will be a catalyst to something even bigger. Having more workshops. We need to get into the schools, and we need to get to different segments of society to tackle that issue of stigma and discrimination. I want to take the opportunity to thank PAHO, Pan American Health Organization, for partnering with us in making this workshop a reality. And so that's the highlight for on Thursday. I forget, let me back up. Tomorrow evening we'll be back here on Fun Radio with On the Mark program will be here tomorrow also. So again, and then Thursday the stigma and discrimination workshop. On Friday we will open to the public half day, and then we have the staff retreat from 1 to 4. And on Saturday we have talk about that. Let's get physical. Right.
Let's get physical walk. It starts at the Malcolm Gishar Park, and it goes from the park
onto Pinnies,
onto Pinnies, onto the bypass road, coming down Pump Road, going around the roundabout by the Bat Cemetery, coming back through town, and coming onto Samuel Hawkins Drive, back on Pinnies Road, and back to the Malcolm Gishar Park. And so we'll be starting that from 5:30
in the morning.
In the morning, and we're asking the general public to come out and support mental health. But while Coffee was speaking and while I was speaking, I just realized that we never said what the theme was for this year. So mental health, World Mental Health Day is celebrated on the 10th of October of every year. And this year's theme is Make Mental Health and Well-Being for All a Global Priority. And that speaks to me in a way that tells me that mental health and well-being is not just an individual issue, it's a community issue. I like to think that we as Caribbean people, we are very collectivist and we're very community oriented, and we have to channel that community-oriented sort of mindset in embracing people with mental health issues and supporting them, and just recognizing within ourselves that we are human and we could also experience mental health illness or mental health challenges. So, yeah.
The unit at you're still located at the Alexandria Hospital.
So we are looking at it in Prospect.
In the Prospect, you see how far behind I am? And not only me, but the general public. Because most of us think that you are still there.
Right, and that's the purpose of tonight's program, to enlighten the public, to educate the public. So we've moved off from Alexandria and we are located in Prospect. We moved like about 3 months back, I think.
Okay.
July, yeah. And so, just about there, right? That building was once the seniors' home. At one point, it was a community center.
Right.
And more recently, it was the building identified as the COVID isolation center.
Okay.
Which was never used because we never got so inundated, thank God. But we have taken up that space. So anybody who knows that building as a seniors' home, that is the same green building. Right.
And that's let me help you. If you're going into Prospect, and you're coming across by the agriculture department, and you're gonna turn left to go up to into Brown Hill, or towards the Brown Hill Ivor Walter School.
Yes.
But right there in that junction, it's close.
Right
close
there.
here. Okay, but that's good, because you know I asked that, and that is very good, because sometimes they had a stigma when you go to the hospital and you go to,
Yes.
You feel conscious of going up those steps.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is very good. So the role of the mental health unit.
So that's a very good question. Because a lot of people think that mental health unit is just about giving people medication, admitting people in the psych ward, and so we are much more than that. As a matter of fact, up to recently, I was called upon to do to assist with a program at the Charleston Secondary School, and some of the teachers told me that they did not even know that we actually provided counseling services at the mental health unit. And there are a lot of people who seem not to know that. And that is a very vital aspect of what we do at the mental health unit. Now let's talk about it a bit, because in talking about stigma and why people just dreaded coming up those steps, or even still at Prospect where we are at, this misconception and misperceptions persons have of mental health unit, that is what we're trying to address in the stigma and discrimination workshop. And so one could come to counseling for anything, whether it's relationship problems, issues, financial issues, what else? Problem on the job. Yeah. It could be anything. But persons think that when we intervene is because somebody is severely mentally ill. That's not always the case.
Yeah. And as I said, we provide services for counseling, and it's open to anyone. People who just want to come in and sit and have a conversation in a safe and non-judgmental space, then we provide that. So no one ever has to have a severe mental health challenge or a severe mental health condition, or let's say an episode, as some people would say. It's something where someone recognized that, hey, I don't think I have anyone in my community who I could speak to, but there's a mental health unit, and I know that they provide counseling, and they provide us a safe and non-judgmental space where I could go and share without it being broadcasted throughout the community. And I think that's the best place for me to go and have that conversation and share what's going on with myself.
Now, having said that, we do, of course, there are times when persons unfortunately may have decompensated so badly that it's going to warrant more deeper intervention, interventions such as medication, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you are suffering from diabetes or hypertension, at some point you may have to be treated with meds. So if for some reason you are suffering with some condition that requires medication, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
And then I think people need to understand that mental health, when you have to take medication and stuff, is just related to the fact that sometimes there is some sort of chemical imbalance within the brain, and some messages aren't being sent the way that they should.
Should be sent.
And the medication really helps in balancing and
Absolutely.
sending those
Signals.
messages where they need to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are some of the common mental health problems that we have here that you see at the unit?
So I spoke earlier on. I made reference to the emotional disorders such as depression and anxiety. That's common. That's big. That's huge. And that happens on different levels.
Yes.
You know, and for different persons. I mean, children going to school doing exams have anxiety because they want to do well. And you know, we're talking about anxiety where it's unmanageable. All right, depression we saw it with COVID-19 during the lockdowns and the curfews and all of that, when persons were restricted. You know, and you know, persons do suffer from depression, you know, for whatever reason, whether it's they're going through some financial or relationship problem and so we have these what we call affective disorders, really. Depression, anxiety. We have schizophrenia, which is one of the most debilitating disorders in, you know, mental health disorders that we have, unfortunately. We have the bipolar disorders, where we have a combination, bi meaning two. So you have the manic phase and then you have the depressive state and so stage. What else? Substance abuse is a big thing, you know, and with the introduction of newer drugs, you know, in society, that's become a very big problem, especially among our young persons. The prevalence of substance use disorders of persons between the ages of, say, 18 and 25 is really alarming.
Do we have, based on our local situation, you said substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the types of substances, the names of them?
Yes, we do. I mean, marijuana is a big one. You know, marijuana is a big one. I would think I have not seen much case of cocaine, but
the marijuana is a big one. Have we seen? Do you have the data to suggest whether or not it is an uptick of recent, maybe tied to the perhaps quote unquote legalization?
I don't want to blame it on that. What I've seen in recent times is, you know, what in local parlance they refer to as the foreign. And I had to actually go to research that myself, and I get all those fancy names like purple haze and sour diesel.
Foreign meaning a type of it or grade or something.
It's like synthetic. Actually, it's lab. It's generated in a lab.
Okay.
It's not even the natural marijuana we grow, and it's imported. That's why they call it foreign. And then you have all those different names, you know. And you know, one of the things that I found very alarming was the kind of psychosis that we saw with young persons using, well, they claim to be using marijuana, and you know, to the point where we felt, no, this kind of almost like hallucinogens, right, effect. When we do the toxicology, we realize, okay, it's not cocaine. Yes, it's marijuana, but it's a different grade, if you want to put it this way. It's synthetic. It's dangerous. I mean, this is a serious problem in our society.
And wide-ranging effects as well.
And you indicated the age, young people, the age range.
Yeah, more prevalent between age, I would say, 18 to 25.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When and especially with the young people, when they do that, what are some of the effects that it's having on them? Right.
Good question also. And you know, that was what I found very alarming, because some of the effects we saw, like hallucinations, when we looked at the effects of that, is like marijuana itself can cause that, but you'd have to really use a lot of marijuana, or I mean, people's brains are different too, right? One person can smoke half a spliff and have and just trip. Yeah, the level of tolerance is different. But I mean, generally, when we look at the effects of that drug on young persons, it was very alarming, as I said, and the kind of hallucinations that young persons, were exhibiting, we knew that we had a serious problem in our society.
And the fact that they're still at a very at almost like the last stage of their development, that also plays a major role in that as well, because between those ages 18 and 25 you're still developing, and so the effects of marijuana and drugs have a big impact on you during that time.
Yeah, and when you do the history and you found out the how long they have been using, what people do not understand is the continuous and prolonged use of these substances can have a deleterious kind of effect on your mind, on your brain cells.
Well, in that case, what type of intervention measures do the unit have? Do you have that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, again, it depends on the severity and how far they've been in there, in terms of how chronic it is, and how severe it is. So, it's in some cases psychotherapy can help, but in some cases psychotherapy alone cannot do it, and so that's where the medication comes in, where, for instance, if we have persons hallucinating and so on, totally out, they're not aware of their surroundings and out of touch of reality, then we're going to have, because Mr. Clarkson spoke about the imbalance of the chemicals in the brain, and that's what people have to understand. These are psychoactive drugs. Psychoactive means it acts on the psyche, and so once it starts acting on the psyche, it starts messing with your dopamine levels, your serotonin levels, and all of the chemicals in your brain, and so that's where medication comes in to get the balance back.
You can never tell if you're getting everybody,
right?
But and also based on our population size and the numbers that you do see at the unit, how do you regard it? You think that for our size we shouldn't be doing that number?
I think it's too much. It's seriously, the substance use, especially among young persons, is very alarming. It's too alarming. It's like crisis stage.
Yeah.
No, I mean, these are young persons. These are the future of tomorrow. And when we look at the number of young persons who are abusing substances, trust me, it's a health. Crisis.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And those are just the numbers that we know. Those are just the people who we interface with on a regular basis. And so I feel that we don't have the research yet to say, give an exact number of people who are being affected by this, people who are using this. And so I think that's where people like us with our experience comes in, where we are given the support to do these sort of research and to gather these sort of data. Yeah. So those numbers, or what Mr. Coffey is saying, it's alarming, are just what we see on a regular basis.
Right.
You think, therefore, what about the stigma and the discrimination and so on? How are we doing with that?
You're asking some really brilliant questions, but I don't expect nothing last time, sir. I mean, I know you're on top of it, but I'll tell you something. I read an article, and I said the stigma of mental illness is worse than the mental illness itself. That's what the literature puts out there, and it's true. I would have made mention earlier that persons are afraid of accessing services, because of how they are regarded, and the attitudes of person towards them, and so here it is that you're suffering, you need help, but you're not going to come forward because of what persons will say or how they will look at you in public. And so that's, I think, the core of stigma and discrimination. You know, persons not accessing the help. And the fact is, the help is there. The help is there, you know, but because of
Perception.
the perceptions and the misconceptions of mental health conditions, persons are just afraid to come forward. And that's why we believe we just need to get out there and do the psychoeducation from the primary school levels into the secondary schools, and, you know, just at every level, just do some education and try to break and eradicate that stigma and discrimination of mental illness.
Who should do this work? Just you and the unit, or all of us?
All of us. And that's why we say we're on a community-based program. A community-based program is literally a community-based program. It cannot be only the mental health unit. It has to be from the homes. It has to be from the mental health unit. It has to be from the hospital. It has to be from the counselors, from the social services, the police officers. Just name it. We need all hands on deck.
Are you at a higher risk of falling in a depressive state if you are a person who is an introvert as opposed to someone else?
I don't think so.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't think so.
The reason why I
because-
ask that is because in our society, people think that if you don't tell of certain things, you have it bottled up. You have the danger of falling into that, no?
Okay, so let's put this into context. So during the pandemic, there are people who developed a lot of psychological challenges, and people who are introverts and extroverts. Introverts are people who prefer to be alone, people who prefer their own solitude and being in a space on their own. Extroverts are individuals who would like to go out and meet people and engage with people on a regular basis, almost every day. So when it comes to depression, it doesn't really have much of an impact on the individual themselves if they are an introvert or extrovert. What happens is, for an introvert, being in pandemic and being restricted from going out is something that they would love. So when it comes to something like that, then they're fine. But where depression comes in is on the extrovert side, where they are contained, and the extrovert is contained and unable to go out and do the things that they love. And so that's where depression might set in.
So it's fair to the Jews, as you referenced the pandemic, that generally speaking, because nobody, you can't paint everybody with a broad brush.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, then, that the introverts perhaps fared better during the pandemic.
It might be.
Yeah.
It might be very well. But yeah,
But
you're right.
then
Might be.
you have to look at depression as not just something related to, like in a binary sense, where it's this or that. Depression is something that could affect anyone, and it's based on behavioral, cognitive, environmental. All of these sort of things come into play that sort of offset or make depression sort of set in someone.
But I think the question is a brilliant one. I think when we had the lockdowns and the curfews and where people really felt restricted, an introvert, the person who just naturally enjoys his own space,
Yeah.
I would probably not feel so entrapped
Exactly.
as opposed to the extrovert where they just want to get out, you know, and so in terms of adapting to that solitude would probably be a bit more difficult for the extrovert to adjust to than the introvert that enjoys his space naturally.
The introvert.
So those are two natural things that don't really have anything to do with you know, depression and mental conditions and so on. However, how do we tell when you know, when someone is in a depressive state? Suppose you're in the community and I know this person, and then what do I look at? Maybe a change in behavior or something? How do we see signs?
A change of behavior, but what behaviors? So we look at things like appetite, we look at things like sleep, we look at things like their hygiene. We look at their, what we call the demeanor, you know, the affect. We use the word affect in mental health. But affect is basically, you know, you look at their outward appearance and how they carry themselves, you know, they have that close posture, you know, they withdraw from society, you find that they sleep more than usual, or sometimes they don't sleep enough. But you just said behaviors, which is very broad, but these are the specifics that we would look for.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just some of it. That's just some of them that we would look for.
When you see these things, knowing that it's kind of touchy and the stigma and everything, while the rest of the society or the community would like to help, what should they do? Because you got to be careful, right? When you see these signs, you know, you figure, well, people are not as tidy as they used to be. They're not eating as they used to, etc., etc. So let's say you're a family member or something, you're suggesting get help, come to the unit,
or call.
I mean, that in addition to communication, and I think communication is what it comes down to. And I think that's the first stage in seeking help for anyone, a family member per se. If you recognize that this individual, your family member, and you have to look at mental health. Mental health is something, a mental illness is something that debilitates someone or prevents them from being functional the way that they are accustomed to. And if you see this, then this is where communication comes in, where you come up to that person and you have a conversation and tell them, hey, I recognize that this is what's happening, and I realize that you haven't been doing this, or you've been doing this more than usual, and I feel like something is wrong and I want to help you. How can I help you? And in that mindset, then you say, well, I know of a place where we could go to get some help for you, and taking that as an us sort of issue as opposed to a them or you sort of issue helps someone recognize that, hey, this is something that's wrong with me, and I feel that I have the support to get the help that I need. So communication is very vital in recognizing something is happening with someone and helping them get the help that they need.
So we would talk about stigma and discrimination in the society, and it always goes along with mental health. But the question is then, where is the stigma and discrimination? Does it exist? Where does it exist?
It exists throughout society. It exists even in the homes. Sadly, that you have persons, you know, family members sometimes stigmatized against their own family, and it resides even within the individual himself.
Yep.
What we call personal stigma. You know what I mean? Where persons just put themselves down and just have this negative attitude towards themselves,
and thus it affects your self-esteem.
your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and it just affects you totally, your whole being, you know. And then you have the interpersonal, you know, stigma, where persons in the community or family members or your workmates or wherever look down upon you, you know. It's all around, you know, and that's why stigma is such a huge problem.
Yeah, and then there's structural level where.
If it's structural level, go ahead, talk about it.
Well, the structural level is that aspect of being in society and societal norms, laws, and policies and stuff that are exclusionary. Someone who feels that the laws are preventing them from getting access to health services, these are the things that affect them and create barriers for them to get help.
And we talk about systemic, you know, where within the system itself, you know, that you have, for instance, we know of certain places where mental health is just shifted aside somewhere, you know, some secluded area where, you know, it's not given like the kind of priority like maybe another area of health. And we are proud to say that, and you know, that we really have a very good facility in Prospect, in Cedar Grove, where I think I'm beginning to feel like mental health right now is an envy to many. And I say that proudly. I mean, really and truly, the Nevis Island administration have really invested in mental health, and that is testimony to upgrading mental health facility and taking mental health serious on the island. And I have always said, I've been here for 2 years now, and I've always said that the program here, the community-based program here in Nevis, is a model for many islands in the region. And I say without no fear of contradiction, because I've worked in other facilities. I mean, this community-based program where we go out there and we meet the patients wherever they are, the clients wherever they are, whether it's on the streets, whether it's their homes, in the community, you know, I think it's a really great program. And more recently, since we moved to Prospect, I mean, the kind of investment to make the place so welcoming, you know, and to make the clients feel welcome and comfortable is testimony that this, you know, administration is serious about mental health, and that helps to break the stigma. You know, because if it was shop somewhere, say, in a corner where people hardly know how to find it because it's so secluded, that is an example of systemic stigma and discrimination, because it's like you're not even part of the service that you provide. But I feel really good that what we have up in Prospect is a model facility in this 2022 to provide these services for our persons and our people.
And so the education is one of the weapons that we can use to get rid of this stigma.
Certainly.
Across the board, across the society.
And one of the things we really want to do is embark on education from the primary school level, the secondary school level, and even work with different agencies and government departments. Because when we, you know, in the work that we do, you know, sadly we hear certain comments from professionals, and clearly they themselves, we realize that we need to do some work with them to facilitate the work that we do. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth, you know. So psychoeducation is humongous. It's going to be a pillar project for us, and I think once we get this week out of the way, we're gonna have to zero in on it. We have to, and thank God we have partners who are willing to work with us, and we're gonna have to run with it.
Let's be specific to this society, as we're in this society. How are we doing in the past year or two in terms of the overall society becoming more sensitive to you know, the issues of the mental health, some of the education projects that you have taken on, the mental awareness, mental health awareness stuff, and so on. No, I know it wouldn't happen overnight. But how are we doing with it?
I mean, I think we're doing a wonderful job right now in creating spaces for other people to learn about mental health and to learn about the things that affect people within our community. So as it relates to some of the projects or activities that we have community workshops. As Mr. Coffey said, we want to start with younger individuals, so the primary school, getting into the primary schools and high schools, to tell them about, to teach them about mental health, raise mental health awareness, alcohol and substance abuse, issues related to depression, anxiety, and stress, and of course how it looks with our partners as well. What can you speak to that?
I just I'll let you get to that, but as you mentioned the anxiety, and I realized that in one of your events that you had, or was announced, I don't know if you have kept it as yet, but one of the things that it said is that when you go to that event, you're going to be tested for anxiety.
That's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was curious how you do that. I know when you go to these fairs, you test for sugar, blood pressure, and stuff like that. But how is
test for anxiety and depression? Okay, so we started with a simple screen, you know. So it's like it's a questionnaire. It's a basic questionnaire.
Okay, that's what I'm.
That's a basic questionnaire. So we start with that first, and there are different scores on that, and tell us where your levels are at: mild, moderate, or severe. And based on your levels, it tells us what intervention that person may be in need or not in need of. If it's mild, then we may not need to do anything about it. If it's moderate, there is room for some kind of psychoeducation. Certainly, if it's severe, we're gonna definitely have to do some intervention.
Yeah. So you go to this fair. You say it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 9, from 9 to 1.
And you can get anxiety test done.
And depression.
Yes. And it is not any blood or anything.
No.
They're drawing.
No. It's a questionnaire. Just a questionnaire. You are administered a questionnaire. It's a self-report questionnaire. It's not the most accurate because it's self-report, but it gives us some idea as to where to start.
And whatever the questions are, bear with me because I said things that people think that are obvious, right?
Go ahead.
But that's the work I do.
Right.
So when you ask the questions, you must answer truthfully.
That's a brilliant question. Because they ought to, and that's why I said it may not be the best way to find out because it's self-report. That's one of the disadvantages of a self-report, that persons can be biased in their responses. But we trust and hope that persons will be truthful and give an accurate idea of where they are at with their level.
Yeah, because, the reason why I asked that is because the truth is I never heard of an anxiety test and depression by asking questions.
Okay.
But what I find sometimes when I do ask people questions, they try to figure out where you're going and answer accordingly.
Like what you want to hear?
Yes.
That's what a social response, a social pressure response. Where that's a social pressure response where because of what someone thinks that you want to hear, they will give you that answer.
Right. Or to affect the outcome.
Yes, true.
Because I always believe that you can't do an accurate poll in St. Kitts and Nevis.
No, not St. Nevis alone.
Then here's a light moment. For instance, a few years ago they were doing a poverty survey. And so they went around and they were asking questions, just like maybe the thing, because based on the answers, they make certain conclusions.
Right.
So they asked one fellow, how often you go out for dinner? And the fellow said, me, years now. I eat a proper dinner and stuff like that and so on. And he gave those questions thinking that at the end of the questionnaire, he will get a voucher to go for dinner or something. So what happened was that answer skewed
Exactly. The result.
the result.
Absolutely. And we say it every time. And people have their own agendas.
Right.
And so, and I like that example you used. Let me give you another example.
Yeah.
When I worked in the school system, right, you administer ADHD test, right? You know the ADHD test, that's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder test, right?
Yes.
And then the classification of drugs that we use to treat that disorder is stimulants, right? So you have things like Ritalin and Adderall and Vyvanse and all that good stuff. Now, stimulant drugs give you that advantage, that added advantage, right, in performance. It's a performance enhancement drug, right? So you take that and you're very alert, you're focused, and you know your attention span is broadened, and you know you will do better. And so when I worked at the medical school, I saw a lot of that. I saw students manipulating that ADHD test to get the stimulant meds to outperform their colleagues, their peers, you know. So you see, come back to what you say, this is one of the major disadvantages of self-reports.
Yes.
Now the good thing about it is that this is just a questionnaire, but you have more sophisticated, it's not conclusive, so you have more sophisticated tests that you can administer. That's just to give you an idea, and from there you work it, you know, through and have more interventions.
Okay, we're running up on our time. By the way, if you like to ask quickly a question or make a comment, you can do it now at 1-869-469-1616 and 1700. We're going to ask you to go over again the your program of activities. But before that, anything we missed that we want to mention before we go?
Contact information. We've not dealt with that. Let's give them the contact information.
All right. So yes, you could contact us. Oh, our address is Cedar Grove Prospect Estate, and our contact number, you could get us at 469-5614 or 469-5521 extension 6816, or our mobile number where you could get us on mobile or WhatsApp, 660-9551.
There's also an extension 6817. So 6816 and 6817. The 660-9551, that's our mobile phone. The 469-5521, that would go through the government what do you call it? Switchboard, yeah. And then you would get the extensions. And then you have a straight line, you can dial direct 469-5614. And of course you have an email address mhu@niagov.com.
Okay, somebody would like to speak to us before we leave. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. Yes, sir, good evening.
Hi there.
Do we have an opioid problem in Nevis Syndicate?
I can't respond to that. Not to my knowledge. I have never encountered one. I mean, the closest, as I said, would have been cocaine, and I have not even seen much of that. But opioid and those harder drugs, no, I have not seen any of that. Alden?
No.
Oh.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yes, you have counselors all day in your one.
Yes.
A counselor. And
I'm
you
a
have
social worker.
one
And counselor, yeah.
social worker and
Yeah.
counselor.
Yes.
Okay. So the question I wanted to ask, as you gave the numbers that people can call, for what reasons can they call? For instance, suppose you have a sudden event, tragic event or something. You can call.
Of course,
Yes.
of course.
And talk to somebody.
Right, because we're talking about stress management right here, right? God forbid we were to be hit by a severe Category 5 hurricane this year. We're still in the season.
Yes.
Persons, that's a traumatic event.
Trauma.
And that, if not taken care, if you don't get any intervention, that can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a serious psychological disorder.
And it doesn't have to be a national traumatic event, correct?
No.
It can be a personal.
Of course.
Any sort of life event, any sort of traumatic life event.
But sometimes you lost a loved one.
Yeah.
sometimes because not everybody knows how to talk to somebody and so on. So things like that, you can help.
And that's a whole different topic for another day, about not everybody knowing what to say, because a lot of people, even they mean well, they're well intent, they have good intentions, but trust me, the kind of things that people say sometimes to persons when they lose loved ones and so, when you really have to listen and think of it, you're really not helping the individual, really and truly. And that is a whole different conversation for another day.
Right, because we've had a lot of some tragic losses.
Yeah.
And everybody seem like they want to help.
Yeah, which is good. And
which is good.
Good, yeah.
However, sometimes the experts would know how to do it better, right?
And that's the crux of the matter right there. And that's your professional counselors coming, because the people are well intended. They have good intentions and they want to help, but sometimes what you say may cause more harm than good. And in this kind of work, do no harm, because when you think you're helping, you may put that person in even a deeper depression.
Yep.
So that's your professional counseling comes in, and that's why we encourage people to seek professional help. And as Mr. Claxton would have indicated earlier on, it's not just professional help, but being in a safe space. We know that we, the small islanders, we love gossip. We thrive on gossip, and so the worst thing you want to do is to go put out your business order to somebody you think is trustworthy, will uphold your confidentiality or your privacy, and before you know it, they add all the kind of seasonings in it, and it's all there juicy and nice, and everybody knows your business.
Well, I will tell you this: if you're willing to take me on, I can have you back for that particular topic, because you're not going to meet a lot of friendly people who you discourage from that.
Well, I think we need to do something on that.
I will take you on something.
I will take you on with that. Let's talk about that.
So you seriously would tell people to curtail the gossip?
Yes, I will. I say every day, every opportunity I get, I say, because it's dangerous. It's causing a lot of havoc in society. The kind of things people put out there, they don't understand the damage they cause to persons' lives.
Yeah.
Trust me, that's a huge problem.
Trust me, you're not going to meet a lot of friends
that's
from
okay.
tomorrow onwards.
It's
Because you work with me. It's difficult to tell our society to curtail the gossip.
I know. Because listen, I come from Dominica. It's no different. Small island states. Because everybody is in everybody's business. Because we are small, everybody is in everybody's business. But the point is, people need to recognize that our words, our tongue have power, and we can destroy people.
Yeah, but the last thing I'm going to say, I know a fellow who that's his job. He takes care of it anyway. So finally, let's go over again your week of activities, what is left, and so on.
Tomorrow.
All right. So what's left for this week? Tomorrow on Wednesday, we have from 9 to 1 p.m. the health screening and depression and anxiety screening as well. That will be at our facility in Prospect, Cedar Grove.
Night.
And yeah, tomorrow. And then in the evening, we have an appearance back here at 1 for On the Mark. And then, and that's from what time? 7?
8 to 9.
No, that's from 8.
8 to 9.
8. And then on Thursday, we have a closed workshop with invited guests who are health practitioners, public service or public safety professionals as well. And that workshop will be from 8:30 to 1 p.m. and it will be focused on stigma and discrimination. On Friday, our office will be open in Prospect. Will be open from 8 to 1 p.m. and then from 1 to 4 we will be closed for retreat for the staff. On Saturday it's our last day of celebration for Mental Health Awareness Week, and we going to culminate that with Let's Get Physical Walk.
Mhm.
I was trying to remember the name. Let's Get Physical, and that is going to start at 5:30 a.m. from the Malcolm Gishard Park. We are going to go on Pinnes Road, come up on the bypass road, going down Pump Road, around the roundabout in Bath Village, Bath Cemetery, come through town, go on to Samuel Hunkins Drive, go on to Pinnes Estate Road, and then back to the Malcolm Gishard Park, and that it's at 5:30 a.m. on Saturday the 15th, and that's it.
That's it. That's the last word. We thank you. We wish you all the very best with the rest of your program and week of activities. And you can always come back here. We can talk about this stuff and other stuff. Macmillan Coffee, all day in Claxton of the Mental Health Department here in Nevis. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, sir.
Thank you.
Our first segment of this evening's program, Macmillan Coffee and all day in Claxton of the Mental Health Department in the Nevis Island Administration here in Nevis. A second segment is coming up right after these.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builders Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Back on this episode of Talk That Get Results, our first segment featured Macmillan Coffee and all day in Claxton of the Mental Health Department here in Nevis. Our second segment, Conrad Nye Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to your staff here at Von Radio and to everyone in tune to this program. Webbo, once again, I'm happy to be here. The previous conversation was quite interesting, Webbo, and I guess we can speak more about it because I have been enlightened to a great extent about mental health, and of course I suppose we probably need to have more of a conversation about it, as it's something that carries a stigma.
Let me just take a second. Okay, I got that cleared up. So you were saying, go ahead.
Yes, I was just saying that it was an interesting discussion, just moments ago, talking about mental health. It's something that we all kind of shun away from, but of course, Webbo, I think a lot of us probably need to look into it just to probably check our degree of not functioning as we supposed to. Webbo, once again, I'm happy to be here, Webbo.
Some revealing information too.
Yes.
In terms of, the thing that I find is interesting about it, Naya, and they did mention the fact that they got to do outreach in the society and education and stuff like that to get rid of the stigma, etc., etc. What I find also is interesting is that to do this education and in terms of the stigma and all these things, right? I don't know how it's going to work and how much work we have to put in, because these things, you said that it was interesting, you found some good information, but people are not locking on to it. For instance, we might have a discussion let's say they announce they're going to have a panel discussion somewhere in a town hall or something, nobody's going to go, or hardly anybody. But announce you have a political meeting or something, and people turns up. Not that I'm saying you shouldn't go to the political meeting and so on and so forth, but I think we're making the point how this also is very important in the society, and which will help if people get the information, perhaps might help in terms of the stigma that we're trying to fight, and as a consequence maybe bring down the cases of the depression and so on. The other thing I find is interesting in it, did you hear the part about the anxiety test?
Yes.
What do you thought of that?
Well, it's a questionnaire.
Right.
And I suppose it depends on your answer to the various questions. They make a judgment based on your anxiety or something to that effect. Well, it's very difficult to understand that how they're going to approach this, because one would have thought really probably would have been plugged into something, and you see a chart or a graph, something, in response to your questions. But it can be elusive if it's about you writing about yourself.
But you see, that is why I extended my question to them on it, because again, when you're looking at a particular society that you're dealing with, our society and our people tend to give you the answers that they think you want to hear, or to give you the particular answers for a desired outcome.
Yes.
Rather than maybe the honest and accurate answer to the question. So that's interesting in terms of and then I linked it with doing polls around here.
Same thing. Quite elusive. Can't count on them in a definite way.
But I suppose yes. Go ahead.
No, interesting topic, Webbo. I mean, we have seen this all around. And I just want to say, one time I asked a person who suffers from mental circumstance, and I asked him, how does it feel? And she said to me, it's almost like trying to find a station on a small radio, and you keep moving the dial. And when she said that to me, I find that was very painful to have this happening within your head. That thing, like it's just noises, and I find it, when she said that to me, very, very far-reaching and painful. Really. So it's something very deep. It's something people doesn't have much of a control over, the individual, and society doesn't help at all. I mean, in Nevis, in the past, we know so many people who are known by the abbreviation crazy this, crazy that, crazy. And of course, I think really and truly, because of recent events, even they had an event in the Quadacor area yesterday, and previous events, and I think the government have to look at mental health very, very, very careful, because when the foreigners come here and they see the people roaming the street, and they does ask the question, what is what is being put in place for people who just suffer from mental health and need help in every respect.
But on the flip side of that, again, because of the stigma, sometimes a person need help, but they don't seek help because of what. And you remember at the beginning they said that then they now have a unit in Prospect, and I said yes, because when you go normally by the hospital, and then they interjected and they said yes, because people didn't want to be seen going up the steps, because they figure, and things like that. So all these things, I suppose you have to have a society that is educated and understand, so that you remove the stigma and the discrimination. The other thing that I find was alarming too is the indication of the use of illegal drugs, which is contributing to this mental issues. And he said that one of the things that been used is not so much the marijuana that is grown in the earth, the synthetic ones. That's almost scary.
Yeah, that's scary. It's a substance abuse in a general way, Webbo. I think there's a lot of youths these days who abuse these substances in a serious way. I look at it and I'm thinking it's a huge increase. You know, not just smoking, but also drinking, yes, as it relates to the marijuana, I mean, they have done so much with the herb, Webbo, in terms of the lab and the science and trying to make it more potent, and they have done so much with it. And I would like to say, in England, there are certain marijuana still remain Class A drugs. There's a marijuana in England which is, they call it skunk or something like that, and it's marijuana, but it's been through lab and science processing or whatever. It's still a Class A marijuana, and ordinary marijuana, what we may say Jamaica weed or whatever Caribbean herbs, has been reduced to a Class C drug in England, and that's been like that for many years.
Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. I enjoyed the presentation of the two participants, and I have to say, as an emerging society, we are beginning to understand the degree to which it must be addressed, and as a consequence, we now have brought it to the front and center to understand the importance of mental health. Now, years ago, did we have a mental health practitioner? No. Why? We still have the same same kind of issues among our people within our society, but we were never able to identify them, classify them, and ultimately recommend treatment for them. But I don't think our society has changed that much to the extent where we are now looking at it as a completely different ball game. In my view, we had people who were mentally disturbed, emotionally disturbed, and as a result, they needed the attention in the earlier years. But it has become an academic issue, and to the extent academia and academics have been brought into our society to help us to deal with the mental issues. Now, a lot of it is emotion, but a certain degree of tolerance can be taught, administered, based on the academics and the institutions that are now training our people to understand the importance of mental health. Like I said, mental health has been around since the beginning of time, but our society as a small one had not given the attention and put it on the agenda as the importance it is, and consequently we are now beginning to tackle it, and we have experts like who you had on this evening to broaden our understanding and horizon, and to bring about practical or medicinal application to ameliorate that problem. crazy people around. Well, let's leave it at that for now.
Okay, what else we got?
Well, let me just make one more comment on it, Webbo. I do not understand the relevance of the bartenders. At the same time, the bartenders are involved with not an illegal substance, but it has been licensed, but it does have its destructive application when one drinks or takes alcohol. So in that regard, I just don't understand as to the, well, I shouldn't really put it that way, the relevance, the importance. Maybe they would have learned quite a lot from the bartenders, but then how do they go about curtailing people habits with reference to that legally prescribed or licensed drug?
Okay, let me just take this. Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, you're on the air.
Good evening, gentlemen, and all those who are on the panel. Carl Brown here, from Fountain and St. Kitts. A question towards mental health. As one of our mental health workers, right? I have never, for quite a while, hearing anybody talk about some form of protection and safety for mental health workers who have to deal with these physical and very strong mentally ill people. Lots of time we get seriously injured and hurt, and there is no form of compensation or support for us except write a report, and that's the end of that. I support the protocols and safety for those who are mentally ill, but what about the safety, the protocols, some form of compensation, relief, and protection for those who working along with the mental health people? There is nothing in place for us.
That's in my
So
view
that is something that we need to discuss too.
I think that's a very important question. You've been working in that area for a while?
Yeah,
And
I am 27 years and 1 month and a half in that service.
okay, you ever had occasion, you see like how you just raised it here? You ever raised it elsewhere? When I say elsewhere, I mean...
This has been something that we've been calling for quite a while.
And what would
We
be...
have spoken to ministers, peers, everything, and all they said they are, all you hear is that these are sick people and we have to deal with them in this way. We have no problem, but we don't hear nothing in place for the workers, any form of protection, any form of injury, compensation for being injured by these mentally ill people. And we all know they have reached a fact that they have even killed us and seriously injured us, all form of injury and even up to death. Your station have to read out news sometimes where mentally ill people killed and seriously injured other people, including properties and that sort of thing, and those people never being compensated for mentally mashing up your car, mashing up your house, these destructive things that they do when they get off.
Yeah.
What is in place to protect the citizens from mentally ill people and your property also? There is nothing. He goes down at, he's a sick person, police lock him up for a while, you take them to the mental place for a couple of weeks, couple of months, and then sometimes they go to court and that is gone, or they go in prison for 3 months, 6 months, that is, but what about the loss for me? A citizen who may have lost, who they may have mashed up my front windscreen, and we all know that they is up nearly $10,000. They may have injured your animals, all that sort of thing. So when we're talking mental health, we got to go all the way. All we do is protection for them and be nice to them and that kind of thing. But what about we, the citizens who have lost and are losing continuously because they are sick? So the government and the mental health institution have to put something in place where citizens can recover some financial loss from doing damage and injury and even death to your loved one and even the mental health workers. We have to put something in place to protect them because we need them. We need the people to work with the mentally ill people. So this is another discussion we need to have tonight.
Yes, okay.
Gone.
Okay, thank you very much. The caller made some important points, and it shows the priorities, and that's why I asked him the question whether or not he had raised that concern in other forums, because I know even with governments, they put policies and monies aside for different things. And I think that's a very important point the person had made. The other thing, though, I was wondering in terms of some of the examples he gave to make his point, in terms of, let's say, someone windscreen is smashed by a mentally ill person. Edric, that will normally be covered by insurance, isn't it?
Well, yeah, if your vehicle is insured,
and
be covered.
if it's running on the road, it should be insured.
Right. At the same time, but that's another topic. Of course, let's briefly spell it out.
Right.
If you're insured, you'll be compensated.
Right. So I was just saying, yeah.
You're not going to be compensated.
But if you're not insured, you're not on the road. You agree with that?
Webbo, I can agree and I can disagree. There are several ways. I was told that you can have your vehicle on the road and it is insured because it has happened to me. But if you don't have the proper thing in place, the insurance companies have a way of wringing out of the liability. I was told that the compulsory insurance program was put in effect to protect all the vehicles on the road, including if it is stolen and cause bodily harm or property injury, property damage, that the insurance company cannot wring out. But in order to prove that, you have to take the insurance company to court. Because I had a vehicle, the vehicle was insured simply because my son's name wasn't on the policy. They told me the vehicle wasn't covered. But I understood through the grapevine that the insurance coverage on that vehicle protects the vehicle regardless of who is driving it. Whether or not the person's name is on the policy, the vehicle is insured and therefore you have to be compensated. But when we did the report for the insurance company, the company said, look, your son's name wasn't on the policy and therefore the vehicle wasn't covered simply because he was the driver. No, again, through the back door, through the grapevine, I understood that the insurance company could have been taken to court to fulfill their obligation under the policy. But
you're aware,
when I look at the cost,
but you're aware that a person can be taken to court, and once you're taken to court, there are winners and losers. You're aware of that?
Quite so.
Okay.
And therefore, I have weighed my options and look at it from the standpoint, the cost and the fear of losing, having to pay the lawyer and all that. I decided that let me swallow and pay the $115,000. So, to answer your question, doesn't mean that insurance will always pick up the tab for a vehicle that is on the road, although the vehicle is insured. Did I make my point?
Yeah, you make your point, but just like in a case, is whether your point persuaded Naya. Naya, did his point persuade you?
Well, there's a policy, and you sign a piece of paper, and you should read it before you sign. Really, from what I know about it, is if your name is not on the policy, then the insurance doesn't live up to the obligation. That's what I know. Stanley is telling us something tonight, which is of interest also.
But keep in mind, if you listen closely, the thing he was telling you, which was contrary, or in addition to what you said, did you hear where he said he got it?
No.
Okay, that's what I do well. But listen very acutely. He said he got it through the grapevine.
Well, there's a prominent lawyer here who, when I say that, sometimes you have to use colloquial language.
Well, that's why I use back your own colloquial language.
Okay, but that particular lawyer, I didn't contact him simply because I weighed my options and weighed the numbers and made the decision, painful decision, to absorb the loss.
Which suggested to me that you had some doubt as to whether or not you would win.
Listen, the players.
Work with me.
Yeah.
So you had some doubt. Work with me.
Right.
So therefore, you were a little suspect of the grapevine information.
Not really.
But you were confident in the grapevine
because
work with me. You therefore were confident with the grapevine information.
True.
Okay, but you had a doubt in that confidence, so you did not bother go to court.
The judge is another player.
So you figure the judge you will meet will be a player that might not agree with the grapevine information.
Quite so.
Okay.
And at the same time, a judgment handed down by the judge is sometimes final. If you want to pursue it to a higher court, you can pursue it, but it will cost you. But when you begin to look at the numbers, when I began looking at the numbers, I recognized that let me just take my loss and conclude it. That's what I did. You can't trust everybody in the game. There are people who are influential enough to persuade a decision.
Even the judge.
Even the judge.
Okay, but I was going back to the point that the caller made. I think they made some important points in terms of, if you're going to move on and improve a society, these are things that you must look at in terms of concern also for your citizens and certain areas. To me, it made a good argument. You have these high-risk jobs that people are performing, and whether it be in terms of insurance for the workers, maybe that can be a way to make them feel comfortable in these, and in the uncompensated.
Well, you got occupational hazards, and sometimes they are categorized, and ultimately you'll be compensated accordingly. Because if you are on the job, got injured by a crazy person, that could be an occupational, whatever you want to call it. You have suffered injury, as the case might be, and therefore you'll be compensated by your employer, as the case might be. Social Security, as the case might be.
And the other thing he mentioned, he said he's been there for over 27 years doing that work, and perhaps campaigning or advocating for that period of time, which is across different personnel in terms of in office and stuff like that and so on. And these are things that I think maybe as a society, maybe we need to begin to focus on in terms of when we are campaigning and people are voting and so on, what issues you want to bring. So a person who picks up that issue and says, well, these are some of the things I would implement to make sure that people are safe, etc., etc. And then, the society and the voters begin to look at those and say, well, those are things that I think I can support, and so on and so forth. So we must begin to look maybe at things in these regard in order to get these sort of improvements, no?
True.
Yes, well, I think it's a part of a developing society that these things should certainly be considered. I mean, that job is a high-risk job. It's a high-risk job, and like any other high-risk job, they got that extra what could I say, compensation. There's that extra concern, really. And if you bear in mind, a crazy person cannot be a culpable individual, and therefore you would not be compensated from that unhealthy minded person at all, even when they do hideous crime, like, well, it's probably not even a crime, like kill their carer. They are let go scotch-free, well, to a great extent. And so I could definitely understand what the caller is saying. They need some protection, they need some assurance, and probably insurance in that kind of work environment, which is very risky, high risk. Because people are crazy, and they would do things that make you think that they're not really crazy, because they will go out and hurt your son or your daughter if they don't like you as a carer. And you start asking the question, are we dealing with crazy people or spiteful people here? One of the things I ask myself is, at what point one is considered to be crazy, but I hate that word, really. But at one point, I know sometimes, the professional would say, well, if you're not dangerous to anybody or dangerous to yourself, is not causing any hurt to anybody or hurt to yourself, you're okay, and they would just send you away. But I think sometimes it's much more than that is required to sometimes stop things in the before it gets out of hand, really.
Well, like I said...
Okay, let me just take this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good night, brother. Good night, Stella. Good night, Naya.
Good night.
Good night.
At least that crazy person got some kind of family members. Everything we talk about, government. Government got institutions like the infirmary, we call it, the garden home. You got the mental place that they put mental people. Some people got the mentally people out and doing all kind of wrongness. And what these people, maybe they might get house payment and all these things, and got this and got that, But because of the situation, they can't manage it themselves. Some family members manage it for them. And they will out there in the public doing all kind of things. And because nobody know, or nobody try to investigate the family, maybe who come from, and destroy these things. Look one time a guy went to Passport because some situation are here with here no woman. And break in the showroom and mash up some car for Passport. So who do you think government not pay for that? I don't think so taxpayers money is supposed to pay for that. You got a family, maybe you got wife and you got children. So these are things that we got to look to too. We got to look to seriously. Because this guy never crazy or nothing, you know. Because look at his mental problem what do he just get into whatever he wants to do and do what he got to do. And these are things that we got to really look into. Maybe government not got to put something in place for all these kind of mentally challenged people when get in these things with the quotas too. Alright then.
Yeah, okay.
Well, many of us out here who might be more crazy than the average crazy person, but at the same time, we have to develop a certain degree of tolerance. And in that regard, we have to be able to tolerate certain types of behaviors, certain types of people, as the case might be. And in that regard, we all should figure out a way of getting along with others. And it's not a difficult thing. It's just that the two professionals we had here, the sessions they're having for Mental Health Week, should be able to broaden the understanding, the education, the information, the communication, and ultimately come to a conclusion that we are on the right path, having professionals to be able to guide our nation and its peoples to the next level where they're able to identify certain mental illness, provide a certain amount of treatment, and reduce the level of mental illness among our population.
We seem to have been having a few, certainly I can add, say quite a few for our population size, of very heinous events of late. And it speaks to, does it, the level of anger and so on in the society, you think?
Well, we all have a certain amount of tolerance, and at the same time, we can only tolerate so much.
Right, but what I'm asking is, when you have a number of events of that nature in a short space of time, and taking into consideration the size of the population, is it cause for grave concern?
Well, it is. It is. If I go to city and say no, I wouldn't be honest to our society, to our nation and its peoples. We understand that people will rage to anger, and ultimately they're going to lash out. Luckily, we have now got the professionals on board, and they are schooled enough, trained enough to understand.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good night, Webbo.
Yes.
Good night to your panelists.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You know, I was listening a while ago to, well, I listened to the professionals.
Mm-hmm.
They have a hard job, you know.
Tough job.
And we often label people's whole family. Sometimes that's part of the problem, too. One of my family members may have a mental issue. And the community assume that everybody in that family has it. So some people try to distance themselves from that sick relative. Are you aware of it? They say all of them crazy. I mean, we could be cruel. The services are provided, and sometimes because of that, because they run, well, I'm not saying they have mental health clinics where people, you could go, they have free counseling, and some people would go if somebody would go with them before it gets really bad. But like they hold in Basti Health Center and Molyneux and Nevis Sandy Point on a Thursday. When anybody see you going down there, they assume that either you have mental health problems, or they assume that your family, that it is the extreme, that they're crazy. So people avoid, I mean, they say that they've tried getting places where it's not so obvious what you're going for. So the thing is allowed to fetter. Now, I kept thinking about this lot of recent things, you know. People are on edge. Last night I listened to part of Patch's show. He played a clip, which I'm still trying to figure out the end. I don't know if you heard about it. Where someone allegedly on the peace program was issuing threats. Did you hear it?
No.
I mean, it's so serious. Because I heard somebody was commenting. I heard it. I said, what exactly you mean? You know, if you pay us your money, if you don't get your money, what are you going to do? I said, these people should be taken and checked for their mental health. And all of this politics bring to the surface a lot of the issues that people have. You hear them on the radio, and with everybody repeating the same thing over and over again. You give them the number 465,000. They don't go. And another thing, those you see on the street, there's supposed to be a mental health daycare center in St. Kitts. Are you aware of it?
No.
No.
Are you aware of it?
No.
I can't hear you.
We are not aware of it.
Huh? Yes. So when you're released from the psychiatric ward, you can go there during the day. You are fed. You have activities, they do gardening and whatever. And they go home at 4 o'clock. Now this is where the COVID and the family come into play. People would have noticed that before the COVID, there weren't many people on the road because they were all attached to the Dr. Lake Daycare Mental Institute. Well, after the COVID, you know, they couldn't take them and let them out and bring them back in. So they were allowed to stay with their families, who often are unable to go with them, and you see them all over Bastille. So I am asking the question tonight, and somebody who has the answer. Has the daycare facility reopened? That would reduce, and our people, as I say, all of us have some craziness. That's what old people say, right? All of us have some crazy. So we have to be a little more sympathetic, and these incidents show pent-up anger, pent-up rage, the fear of rejection, and I don't want to be biased, but have they considered, in terms of the nationality, offering personal services, mental health services to that category of citizens? That's a question. All right, then.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I repeat all the time on this program this evening the word tolerance, because all of us got a certain amount of craziness within us, but we have to develop tolerance.
Don't you find over the recent past, that the society has become very hostile?
True. Or it is more evident. It was probably there, but was suppressed. But it has become more evident now. People are more emboldened to be hostile within the society.
No,
I don't see it as a recent thing. I think we've always had quite a coarse society here in Nevis, I think, because I've dealt with foreigners very closely, and who have lived here, and was quite relieved to leave, really, because they just think it's quite challenging. And the smallness of the society, where people intrude, and the coarseness of it, you know. To be quite honest, recently, and I have realized that we have turned, seems to be very much reaching out to people now. In every respect, I go to the bank, everyone's coming and say good morning. There's a lot of good morning and good afternoon going on right now, which is very good, And I feel that, I find that has improved in a big way, which is good. I mean, this is St. Kitts Nevis, this is the Caribbean, this is what we're accustomed to, this is what we've been taught, you know. This is not walking on the street in New York, you're going to tell everybody good morning, nobody's studying you. But it's always been a part of it, of our little society, where we communicate and express a bit of goodwill. And I see that happening, but in terms of the coarseness comes from a spiteful thing that exists. A willfulness that exists, and it tends to comes out of areas that it should not come out of, like even government offices and so forth. People dealing with the public on behalf of the government. Sometimes, you know, important, you know, institutions that you know that would bring balance, and you find people are still very prejudiced and so forth. But I find our society is quite coarse.
One of the technocrats that we had here earlier, coming on to the end of the program, suggested, and he said we probably have to do a whole session on that. He suggested a big contributing factor is the gossiping. And I challenged him on it. How are you going to get this thing? Matter of fact, as I speak, some people are very upset with him to say that we need to tone down on the gossiping.
But that is part of our culture. Nigger business.
You see what I'm saying?
Nigger business.
But that's the. So I'm correct then, because you're challenging him. You must not cut down on that. You're saying.
Look, we all enjoy.
Yeah, but my question is
a bit of nigger business.
Right. So you're disagreeing with him then?
Unfortunately, yes.
So there's my evidence. I told him so.
Unfortunately, yes. Nigger business.
But the nigger business sometimes leads to people, you know, find themselves in the corner talking about a situation which sometimes require their attention to make it better. I find that a lot. I mean, something happened and we go on and talk about it. And, you know, you reach out to the individual who's been spoken of, and they need that. They need to talk to you, and you would say, hey, what's going on? Because all these people is saying this and that about you. Maybe a simple thing like a relationship, and what's going on? Because everybody goes through the same thing. But here we would pile up in a corner and left people in isolation, in great pain, and the pains just increase.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, good night again, Webbo. Now, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
How you feel with our young men and our young women, tender age, because of the criminals and marijuana, how they smoke it, how they boil the brown, and how they smoke it. It seems to me like these guys got competition with one another. One in, one out.
Yeah, but there's a big thing going on with the marijuana smoking and the mist and the brown. They call it Mr. Brown, which is they mix it with tobacco, and it's highly addictive. And I constantly talk to people about that. And those guys who smoke tobacco with the marijuana, they constantly smoke all day. I listened to a documentary about that. It's not good at all. It's totally unhealthy, and it's destructive. It's totally destructive.
I believe in next 2 years from now, yeah?
That's the problem we have.
We're going to lose our young men, and you know the mind, the mental going from them.
Yeah, but this is not because of the legalization of marijuana. This has been happening long time before that, you know. It's just been happening all the time, you know.
But now, we need to see it happen because of the criminals right now.
But I suppose they come more in the open.
They're coming in public now. And anyway, they're smoking it. They wrap it anyway, they do it anyway, police are part and they wrap it, and, you know, it just like a lifestyle to them now. And I don't know about it. I mean,
Well, that's
As a
what's going to
Rastaman.
happen if it's legal, just like cigarette. People going to be smoking it all over. But the thing is the effect on them. I'm talking about the health, the motivation. You know, is it doing something positive for them? I know the tobacco smoking is highly destructive, and I see it on in the lives and on so many youngsters' faces as I move around. Really,
I drink for years, right? I drink alcohol. I drink for years. Sometimes I take a drink. I drink in moderation. If I take a drink 4 beers. I drink maybe a glass of whiskey, 2 glasses of whiskey. I feel kind of alright and I done with that because I am young now to drink maybe 7 beers, 8 beers, 9 beers, 10 beers, maybe 5 Guinness and all these things. And this thing with alcohol, how they misuse alcohol, how they drink up these Guinness. You might hear some of them get sick because the pressure gone. They go up the hospital. Oh, you doctor this and you doctor that. When doctor could do, when you ain't going to doctor, but your pressure or nothing. And just using all this high potential drinking. All this high potential alcohol. Smoking, drinking Guinness, doing all kind of things, drink Red Bull, drink the thing they call Magnum and all these things. But another, but we got to talk to them.
Let me ask you this. All these things you said are drinking, why do you drink them for?
But I hope, Mr. Brother, I don't know whether they drink them for.
Okay, well.
He come and he's a lifestyle to them, he's a thing to them. They just sit down and they drink. They just rub a joint and they drink. They drink.
But let me, how about we do this? The next time you see them, right, politely ask them why they do it.
But I do it all the time. I do it all the time.
Right, and what they tell you?
They tell me most money cost me.
Oh, okay.
But then the cost of get all kind of things from them. All kind of forward from them. But
you know,
still we got to look out for society and we got to talk to them. Because I do not think they're going on a good road.
yes, substance abuse is a problem. It's going to be a big problem going forward. But
everything you do too much, you abuse it.
yeah, but I want to make the point though, because a lot of them would say to you, if they don't do what they're doing, they're going crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No.
A lot of them say to you they do what they're doing because of the pressures of society, the pressures that they're dealing with. So it's almost like for some of them a time out.
Mm-hmm.
A time out. A lot of them leave work and they find themselves. Beg your pardon?
They got to buy the Red Bull, they got to buy the Guinness, they got to buy the Hog.
Well, that's
Where they get the money from?
Well, that's commerce. People got to buy, you know. Yeah, I mean, stop advocate that people shouldn't buy. Otherwise, I mean, what's the purpose of the stores and the shops?
Anyway, let's somebody's got a chance. Listen.
So now you said that they do it, they said, to get away from the pressures of society.
I've heard that a lot. I mean, from work, a lot of them find themselves in a particular place where they can relax and drink. This has been going on for years and years and years and years, not just recently. But
let me just take this. Good evening. You have half a minute.
Yes, good evening again. Now, there have been many people who keep denying any link between the use of marijuana and mental illness. I recall some years ago, decades now, Dr. Ben Williams, you know him, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about him.
Yes.
When he was doing his doctoral thing, he did a study on the effect of marijuana and mental illness. He got his statistics from the psychiatric ward, and there was a big outcry, oh, he lied. I don't know nobody nothing. You know? And even now then you go up to the psychiatric ward. And some of the very heavy users, you tell them ease down. They're so addicted. Now something surprised me the other day. I was listening to another radio station where they were discussing the behavior of some young women at a function, how they were being vulgar and actually having sex, you know, how they carry on. And one of the young men said, they're not normal when you see them going on so. He said, often they put ecstasy in the people drink. So I asked myself the question, is the customs aware that ecstasy is coming into the country or is here? In fact, one of them tried to link it, said, well, you know, we have the overseas students. And so, the ecstasy, so I said to myself, are we ignoring or are we only looking for cocaine and ganja? And the effects, I don't know if Mr. Liebert has any idea what I'm talking about. Cause it never occurred to me. You know, you're in America, they're busy popping pills and whatnot.
Opioids.
You know, it is sad, and if it is so, because they said it's so, because these are people who go to the parties, eh? So when you see the girls them carrying us on the road or whatever, they're not normal. And they're advising the young people not to take drink from anybody, not to give anybody give any drink that is open because they already dropped ecstasy and so in it.
Yeah, but also remember is we make up the bed for them, huh?
Hello?
Remember that is we make up the bed for them.
But it's just so sad. But I am saying, start checking for it.
Okay.
All right then.
Okay, thank you very much. You know what I meant when I say we make up the bed for them?
No.
Anybody know?
No.
Is we create the atmosphere and the functions and everything and so on for them. Not true?
Yes, it's true.
Oh, okay. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Thought that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program are solely those